The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a sign that goes on this that says bike parts. All right, now we're going to create a sign that goes on the side of the box that says bike shop. And if you need to, you can look at the PDF reference that accompanied the zip file for this tutorial for if you need any other help designing this. Now, I'm going to put in a blank layer in, and I'm going to use my rectangle marquee, and I'll just drag a random size box here. This can all be scaled and manipulated afterwards. But we're going to be using the dodge and burn tools. So we'll need to have a value inside of our box rather than a pure white or a pure black. So I'm going to go to my swatch menu, and I'm going to put my cursor over a swatch I desire. I'm going to go with 30%, and I'll hit Option Delete to fill it, Command D to deselect, and then Command S to save. So we're going to add our text on top of this, merge it, and then we'll use our dodge and burn tools. I'm going to hit T on the keyboard, and I'm going to set the default black and white. I'm going to choose for my font, I guess I'll leave it at Marriott Pro Bold. I'll hit my cap lock, and I'll click inside my window, and I'll just put in bike parts. And it's a little too far with the spacing between the lines, so I'll marquee select them. I'm going to go up to the option window, and if I'm still on my text tool, just to the right of that T on the arc is a page icon, which will give me access to the character window. And my font size is 16 points. I'm going to drop the spacing down to about 14 to bring it in closer. And then I'm going to justify that center, and I'll go back to my Move tool. And I want this to have a little bit of a color to it, so I'm going to put an arrow stroke on it. So I'll go to my layer window for that. And I can do one of two things. I can double click anywhere of the gray of the layer to get the FX, or I can go down to FX and choose stroke from there. I'll change the color to a default red. I'll click OK. And I'm going to drop the size down to 3, and I'm going to make sure that it's on the outside position of the font. I'll click OK. And now with my Move tool, I'll kind of center that the best I can by eye. I'm going to scale it down a bit so there's more air around the actual gray panel that's behind it. And now I'm going to merge the text layer down with the gray panel. I'll save it, and I'm going to name it. I'm going to zoom in on this, and now we're going to use our burn tool. So this is very much the way we approached our dollar bill for our editorial piece. So I will hit L on the keyboard, and I'm going to start to make some random selections. And now I'm going to hit O on the keyboard to go to the burn tool. I'm going to make sure that the range is set for midtones. I'll make the exposure about 50%. And I'm going to use a smooth edge brush. And I'm going to drop the scale of the brush down a bit, maybe to about 45. And I'm using the open and close brackets to change my brush size. Now I'm going to hide the selection because very often when we go along the edge of a selection and it's an integral part of what we're trying to do, those marching ants are a bit of a distraction. So I'm going to hit Command H, and then I'll go in and kind of hit that edge a bit. Maybe I'll come up and add a little bit more here so it looks like it's more of a panel rather than a crease. That looks pretty good. Now I think I'll go in a little bit more with a little darker right on the very edge where I know the selection is, like so. All right, I'm going to hit Command D to deselect. I'll get the lasso tool again, and just to make this a little bit more logical, very often you'll see that there are co-joining panels that influence each other. So if I come in here now, and then I hit on the keyboard, Command H to hide the selection, I can go in and I can do something like this, where it would make more sense. Do that. And I'm going to stop at this point. I'll let you go and put a few more of these little creases around the perimeter. Then we'll join again, and we'll cut out some of the pieces of the paper, put some outer glow and inner glow on to make it look a little bit more aged. All right, so I've gone in and put a few more creases on the sign, and I've also added the inner and outer glow the way we did prior to our sign when we were making our panel. So if I was to right click, I see the option to paste layer style. So I did that and went in and I played with the opacity and the size of it so it wasn't too overwhelming on the size of the sign. So these are things that you'll all kind of do intuitively. Now we're going to do the same thing we did with the slats on the sides of the crate. I'm going to start by scaling this down though. So I want this to fit inside one of these panels to begin with. And I also want to rotate it a bit. It's a good opportunity to introduce a diagonal. Diagonals are always more desirable than verticals and horizontals because we're starting out with a file that is constricted to those two dimensions. So whenever you can add a diagonal, do so. Now, I want some rips in this sign, but I'd like it to follow maybe some of the openings in those panels. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down below the very last panel, right above the wood layer that we generated all our pieces from. And I'm going to put a new blank layer in. And I'm going to put black behind each of those boxes. So I'm going to hit M on the keyboard and I'll click and drag like this. Make sure I've got black on my toolbar, D on the keyboard for default. I'll hit Option Delete. So now I can see black through the openings in the slats of the crate. And this is just going to make it easier for us to make the selections, but it's also going to make it look a little better as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the panel, the wood panel that is directly below the sign. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to get the magic wand tool, and I'm going to click randomly inside a couple of these panels that have these spaces between them. So I'll shift select inside the first panel, like so. And now I'm going to go to the actual layer with the sign, and now the selections are on the layer with the sign. Now I want to punch those areas out. So if I was to go and add my layer mask now, it would hide everything outside the selection. I'm going to select inverse. Now when I click on the layer mask icon, it cuts through the areas that correspond with the slats on the panel below. Now I went in and selected all, maybe that's over the top. My layer mask, I'll hit B on the keyboard and I'll put the white on top. I can hit X if I want to do it that way. I'll get a brush with a soft edge perhaps, and I'll knock the size down on this, and maybe I'll just reintroduce some of the paper here, just so it's not too excessive. Maybe a little piece there, Command S to save.